President Trump said yesterday that he misspoke during Monday's press conference with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. It's unclear whether the clarification will calm the backlash in Washington, as Trump also said following his meeting with Putin that the Russian leader gave a strong and powerful denial in meddling with the 2016 election. Joining us now is Matt Gaetz, representative for Florida's 1st Congressional District since 2017, where he serves on the Budget, Armed Services, and Judiciary Committees. Congressman Gaetz, good to have you.
Good to be with you.
Where are we now the day after, then? The denial of the initial statements made, or the walk back, or the clarification. What do you make of what Trump said?
I'm glad the president clarified his experience in Helsinki. I think that we'll learn more in the coming days about the progress that the president was able to make in his private discussions with President Putin on the issues of non-proliferation and counterterrorism. On the issue of election meddling, I'm glad that the president forcefully and unequivocally agreed with the intelligence community's assessment that there was Russian meddling in the election. They meddle in elections all over the world, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to become more resilient as a country to protect our election systems and our ballot systems, and that we'll be more resilient going forward.
So were you concerned, though, after the initial press conference when the president did equivocate and say, you know, he gave a strong denial and sort of seemed to favor Putin over the American intelligence community? Did that concern you? Because you've been a strong supporter of this president.
Well, sure, and I still think that at the end of the day, the Helsinki summit was a win, because if we're able to leverage Russia in Iran, in North Korea, in Syria for broader peace, then that will have a far more lasting impact than a misstatement. But I was hopeful after the president's comments in Helsinki that he would make a clarification. I went on television and called on him to do that, to clarify what he precisely meant, and I'm glad that occurred.
Let me just ask you about that in terms of other progress that was made, because we have no idea what these two leaders said to each other in the 2-hour private conversation that they had. And Russia's come out and said now that they are ready to move forward with the plans and the deals that were made in that meeting. We don't know what they are. Do you support, Senator Jeanne Shaheen has put out an idea of having hearing with the translator, American translator who was in the room. Do you support that idea? How are we going to learn what was in this meeting?
Well, no, I don't think that when two leaders get together, there's an expectation that their translators would be testifying about their private conversations. So I think that would impair our protocols moving forward. I don't know that in the future other leaders would engage in a private discussion if thereafter translators were testifying.
How are we going to know,
diplomacy.
Though, then what deals were made and what exactly happened?
I think based on the follow-on work product, right? I mean, I think that we need to see how Russia intends to help us resolve Syria, how Russia can engage with us against some of the Chinese investments in Iran, so that Iran doesn't have access to the capital necessary to go and develop a nuclear program. And then in North Korea, Russia plays a role there as well. And so I think that we've got to see some of the concrete action items that will emerge from that discussion. And it's typical for that to take a little while, because you have a lot of the undersecretaries that are working together to flesh out those plans.
Congressman, you're in Judiciary. How would you assess right now your satisfaction with the cooperation you are getting from the DOJ to produce documents surrounding Russia collusion and all these investigations right now?
Yeah, I'd say that it's poor to quite poor. We've been asking for documents that predate July 31st. The Department of Justice initially said that July 31st was when they opened up on Papadopoulos and began this investigation into the Trump campaign's potential collusion with Russia. I asked Rod Rosenstein in open hearing whether or not there were any investigative actions that occurred before July 31st, and he would not answer that question. We've been asking for documents from before July 31st, and we haven't gotten them. And so that really undermines the position the Department of Justice has previously taken, when now they've gone squirrely on the responses and on the documents.
Do you think there are enough Republican votes right now to impeach Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General here?
Today, no. Look, I believe there's a basis.
Would leadership allow it if there were enough votes?
I don't know. I'm not in leadership, but I'll tell you that, and I have no ambition to be, but I'll tell you that there is a basis for that impeachment as a result of inconsistent statements that Rosenstein has given, unwillingness to produce documents, and then to me what's the most insidious thing is when they redact information that has no reason to be redacted from a national security standpoint. I mean, you're journalists. That should offend you as well. The notion that information that's just embarrassing, but that does not impair our national security, would be redacted by the Department of Justice. And then time and again, we have to continue catching them, redacting stuff they shouldn't redact. Your colleague, John Solomon, has done great reporting on this very issue, and where Mark Meadows was finding even more interaction that seemed to implicate people in the Obama White House.
Let me ask you on a separate issue. So you've appeared on Alex Jones' show InfoWars, and I know you said you were bringing the truth, right, to this program. Would you go back there, given some of the conspiracy theories that he's thrown out? No, you wouldn't go back on the show.
I would not go back on Alex Jones' show. I went on the show because I had an argument to make, and there are millions of people that watch that show. And I think that like in this country right now, we already have enough of people kind of self-selecting their news sources and creating their own version of truth based on the content that they consume. And so I think that as policymakers, we have an obligation to sort of, have a kaleidoscope approach where we engage in multiple platforms, even in those that are uncomfortable to us. I go on MSNBC. They don't hold my views, but I think that discourse is important. But that said, upon further reflection, I think that the things that Alex Jones has said and done are so hurtful to so many people that a member of Congress should not grace that platform and legitimize it, and I would not go back.
Congressman Gaetz, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your perspective today.
Yeah.
We appreciate having you.
Next on Rising, she's been dominating the headlines, but is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really the future of the Democratic Party? Steve Israel, a former congressman from New York and head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, is here to provide some insight into that very important question.
And later on, President Obama has returned